Welcome to the first ever House of Wrestling Podcast episode. It is me, the commander-in-chief of all things House of Wrestling, Nick Hausman, and I am joined here by my very good friend from the other side of the pond, the man who makes it possible for this website to function. It's Innes McVey. Innes, thank you for doing the House of Wrestling Podcast with me here today.
No worries. Listen, I'm very happy today that it's slightly less hectic than the madness that happened last week. But, you know, we'll get through it and we've got lots to talk about, so it works in our favor.
We have so much to talk about here today, folks. We are going to be talking about the 2024 Royal Rumble, Trick Williams, a change to the Raw commentary team, Collision viewership, Okada becoming a free agent. Before we get to any of that, two quick items. First of all, we want to send our best out to Rick Bassman. Rick is a legendary pro wrestling promoter, manager, trainer. Rick is currently struggling with, he's battling stage 1 brain cancer. So we want to send our best to Rick. He's been a friend of the site for a long time. And we have all the information about what he's struggling with right now. So you can go check that out there. Also, the chat room is open. If you are watching us live in video form, that is because you are a House of Wrestling ClubHaus member. We are available to all members. You can watch us first run here on House of Wrestling in the ClubHaus Wednesday and Friday, noon Eastern. And if you're in here and you're watching us live, you could jump into the chat room. You could jump into the comment section. We will pull your comments up here on the show as we go along, and you can let us know what you think of the news of the day. All right, we'll talk more about the club housekeeping, as I'm calling it, at the end of the show.
We're going to get so many puns out of this name. It's great.
Man,
I love it.
Man, it is. But, you know, I was working for all these other people for so many years in this, and I've just been percolating these house puns in my head.
This is years in the making. We've got the slow trickle of all these ideas. It's going to be great.
We got in your house man, right?
Of course.
House meetings, house calls, house shows. We're gonna go house crazy.
Got so many ideas.
All right. Enough of this. We have some, unfortunately, very heavy news to start with here today. So we are going to start talking about the Royal Rumble, but I haven't done a podcast in 2 weeks since I wrapped up Rumor and Innuendo. And, of course, there was huge news that broke on the Thursday before the Royal Rumble. And that was, of course, coming out of the Wall Street Journal detailing these horrifying, these like depraved allegations against Vince McMahon. I was tipped off about them, I believe, by you. I think I saw it first. So I saw it to the Wall Street Journal article first, and then that led me on to the lawsuit itself, which if you've read the Wall Street article journal, the lawsuit itself it's definitely worth a read, but it's a real bad and rough read, to say the least. I told my wife, don't read it. I said, Liz, it's my job. I have to read it. I have to go confront these people. She's like, I'm not going to read it. Then I go up into the airplane and I'm flying to Tampa and I read the whole 67 pages on the flight to Tampa. I'm horrified. I'm sitting in this airplane. I get off the plane. I call my wife. She says, Nick, I started reading the lawsuit. I was like, why did you?
You put the temptation in there.
Why did you do that? And then she told me she stared at a wall blankly for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's like the kind of thing that like you kind of, if you get triggered by that sort of stuff, it's that bad where like some of it is just, it's unreal to me how some of that stuff happened and how you can do that sort of stuff, you know?
So yeah, for those, obviously, I'll do a 30-second breakdown because I'm sure everybody's very well aware of the facts at this point. Janelle Grant, former WWE employee, she alleges that she was on hard times. Her parents had just passed away. She had been working as a caretaker, struggling to find money. She winds up living in the same building as Vince McMahon, gets introduced by the manager of the building, and Vince then starts to dangle the opportunity to have this really high-profile, well-paying, meaningful job at WWE, but in exchange for that, expected sexual favors in return. And this is all alleged, right? McMahon is denying everything that is said here, and this obviously worth pointing out. But then this goes into her claiming that McMahon groomed her, basically made her feel dependent upon him, and that he would take advantage of that by not only forcing himself on her sexually, but pushing her to situations where it was multiple partners at the same time. She then says that she got sex trafficked to John Laurinaitis and was made to send, let's just say, curated explicit content to Brock Lesnar, right? Because
alleged. Then in the lawsuit, it is a former UFC heavyweight champion and WWE talent. But I mean, there's only so many people that can be.
Isn't Lesnar named explicitly in?
So, and not in the lawsuit, in the Wall Street Journal article, they say based on sources that they've spoken to, they've identified it's Brock Lesnar. So Wall Street Journal is saying it's Brock Lesnar. The lawsuit does not mention Brock.
Okay, all right. Well, it's very obviously who it is, who she's pointing the finger at. But so you have these horrible stories coming out, right? And you would think that with the gravity of what is being alleged here, right? This culture of
not just against WWE and not against Vince, but against WWE in general. You know, there's a lot of implications there about the sort of environment that's been created based on that situation.
Totally, right? Because it's beyond this, right? You have Laurinaitis, Lesnar has been called out, but you have these four other unnamed executives. You have, I believe, at least one other star. You also have production people that were
there's a full tech crew or something like that that's named in it. Not named, but mentioned in it. So it's clear that there's a lot of people involved in this. Yeah,
because Vince is walking around with these explicit images and showing them to people. Like there's a referee named. So very if you are to believe everything she says in this report, and truthfully, I have no reason not to believe her, right? We believe women. That's the whole crux of speaking out, right? Then a lot of people knew about this, and it casts this, So we're going to start at the end of the Rumble. We're going to work a little backwards because I want to talk about the press conference first. Because,
I get you.
I don't know that.
I
don't know that we can start the show talking about the Vince scandal and just be like, let's talk about how Rollins and Cody maybe switching things up here.
No.
So first of all, the press, it was a weird vibe, Innes. I was
going to ask you, because on TV it came across a little strange, but I was wondering how it was in person.
It was a weird vibe before we got into the room, right? It was a weird vibe.
Gotcha.
It was a weird vibe the entire weekend, right? Because people were taking this in, and you got to show up and do relatively normal things where it's just hey, let's talk about the Brutus Ball, right? Hey, by the way, that's coming to House of Wrestling soon. I got the origin story on the Brutus. I know, right?
Excellent.
But people were. And look, everybody does their job differently.
Of course.
I personally, don't have a problem bringing this up with talent because they're being affected by it.
Of course.
I looked around the room, and my thought process was, if there are people that are new and have not been around as long as Brutus, the Creed brothers are, maybe not the people to ask, but the people that have been here for a long time.
Especially people that have had direct contact with Vince,
Correct, yes. Those people, I think, are worthy of asking. Now, I really wanted to ask Kofi Kingston about it.
Yeah.
Didn't get time with him in the media junket. Just he was swamped. I did get time with him later at a Boys and Girls Club. Didn't feel like the place to bring it up in.
Of course. Absolutely. No, I get you.
So prior to the press conference, the only talent I'd brought it up with, and we put up the comments, were from Nia Jax. And they went around and she just said that it's business as usual. Her and everybody else is just there to get to work. Nia checked a couple boxes for me. A, tenured, right? B, has a lot of experience. I mean, ups and downs with Vince McMahon and Triple H. Obviously, she got released. And she's a woman. So I felt she was I thought she was an appropriate person to ask about this.
Totally. I mean, it's you have to ask. I think you do have to ask at least the talent, at least for their perspective on it. And I mean, you got the perspective of Cody, which gave a lot of insight. So I think it worked out in the end.
Well, let's talk about the Cody piece here, because so I get into the room, and like I said, the vibe before we even got in the room, the press is kind of hyping themselves up a little bit. Right. It felt very much like, time to put on the flak jacket, buddy. Time to go to war right now. There were definitely some people. People, because we're in such a weird place with the pro wrestling press right now. And I of course see all the discussions that are going on about what is the right way and wrong way to be a pro wrestling media member at the moment.
Sure.
I think people need to, and this is in no defense because I still want to push. I think Brandon Thurston had a wonderful tweet he put out imploring the press how to do a better job. But we got to remember the kind of access that the press is being allowed right now to WWE and AEW, for what it's worth, is only about 5 years old. It started, these press conferences, these media calls started with AEW. Tony Khan, and I believe it was Cody that really pressed for these, for what it's worth.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was Cody that really pushed for it, because I think he was the one who started doing them and talking on them, and then it was Tony who took over.
He is, and Cody wants to have the press there. He wants the press to be able to engage the talent. So anyway, we're only 5 years into this. Before these past 5 years, outside of Meltzer and Wade and Mike Johnson and a couple others, it was like Bill Apter types. Bill Apter was the original TikToker media, right? He was showed up, as Bill talks about in his book, and he's talked to me. They play wrestlers. Bill Apter plays journalists. He's not a journalist. He's playing a journalist, right?
Gotcha.
We are now in a position where there are some people, I think, that are still playing journalists, that are living that kayfabe Apter mag life. And then I think there are people trying to be real journalists right now.
I think because of the whole shift of to social media and digital news and stuff like that, there kind of has to be a bit of a shift in that regard of whether you want to talk about it from a kayfabe or whether you want to talk about it from a realistic. I think a lot of people want the more realistic thing.
I agree. Well, and with a situation like this, as Brandon put in his social media post, that's the gravity of what's being alleged here. Some people think Hunter and Nick Khan are are two of the unnamed people in this. Now, I'm not convinced of that by any stretch.
It's a possibility, certainly. You can't deny that it's a possibility. So you have to.
So we're going to get to Hunter's comments here in a second, because oh boy, do I have some thoughts. But real quick, because I'm in the room, we're all hyping ourselves up, and I always have a fear I'm not going to get called on, because you're not guaranteed a question in these. They, unlike AEW, they keep theirs to a type 40-45. They try to give everybody at least one question. Usually I get two, but some people don't get any. So I want to get in there. I'm not positive if I wait for Hunter, I'm going to get a question in on Hunter or not. I raised my hand for Bailey. They didn't call on me for Bailey. To be fair, I would have asked Bailey about it. And I've told people that, and they are like, dude, you would have been bombarded. And I was like, well, look, here's how I would have phrased my question to Bailey. It is, I would have gone something like this. Bailey, congratulations on your win. Following the horrible allegations coming out by Janelle Grant, I think a lot of WWE fans and just people in general have a great deal of concern for women on the WWE roster right now. As one of the most prominent women in the company, from your perspective, have you seen any incremental changes made behind the scenes to ensure that a situation like this doesn't happen again? I think that's a totally fair question to ask.
I think putting the focus on what the company is doing rather than their thoughts on the lawsuit themselves from a talent perspective is probably the better way to go about it.
And if you only talk to Hunter about this and other executives and you never ask the talent, you are only going to get the company line. So and the thing is, I use this example on the Raw review, which I fucked up. I published it as a private video. I don't even know anybody who watched the Raw, but
teething issues. It's fine. We're in the early stages. We can get over it.
Become a ClubHaus member. I'll do it better on Monday night. I promise. But I was saying in my little post Raw rant or ramble or whatever it may be, if you don't ask the talent hard questions, you're never going to give them a chance to address stuff, because these people are so media and they're kind of isolated. They only get so many chances to talk to people like me or Thurston or whoever. So if you don't know, maybe these people want to talk about it, right? Maybe
and also they can. They're not going to tweet about it.
But the example I used, and it's very, very different, was the Seth Rollins interview I did at last year's Royal Rumble. Everybody was terrified to ask about Punk. Why would you ask about Punk, Nick? Doesn't have anything to do with WWE, Nick. You're just trying to bring clickbait attention to yourself. Well, it was the biggest story of pro wrestling, right? And because nobody was asking about it, when I did ask Seth about it, guess what? Turns out he had something to say, Innes.
Yep. I think a lot of people are just kind of scared of having their access revoked or something like that, because I think there's this idea that WWE revoke access, which I can kind of understand from that perspective, but based on the evidence, that's never really happened, at least as far as I know.
No, it hasn't, to the best of my knowledge. I do know that back in the day when Vince and I won't name names, but other PR people were running the show, there were situations where things were restricted. I've heard that there are members of the press that are not particularly loved by WWE that were in that room that night. But you know what? They were still there, and they were still allowed to ask a question. And to be frank, I know everybody's real worried about my AEW press credentials. I have no idea what's going to happen there. There have been no media events or calls since Christmas Day, and we've got tons of time ahead of us. We'll get into that another time. But in regard to this, so with Cody, I again know Cody very well. I've covered his career probably closer than just about not anybody, but very, very, very closely over the past 5 years.
Of course,
7 years, honestly, ever since he left WWE. Cody has been an executive. He has served at a very high level. And when situations like this come across, I'm sure he's been in the room to help figure out how to resolve a situation or deal with a situation. Resolve is maybe not the best word. Address a situation like this. Yeah. So everybody's terrified to talk about Vince. Nobody said anything to Bailey. Then they give DDP the first question to Cody, and it was, you want to react?
This was my reaction when I saw it at 5 a.m. I was, okay, I mean, I get he's a friend of Cody, but it's like, is the press conference really the best time for this? Can you not do this as a backstage exclusive? Something, maybe.
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it because I was like, oh, that's, but at the same time, I think it did take away a little bit of the idea of this is a press event and not a circus. So I Dallas asked the equivalent of what is it like to be so great? And
accurate.
Which is a common joyful question asked of Tony Khan. And so I then, the levee needed to break. This thing Bailey did bring it up. We got DDP at throwing softballs here. Cody is a more than competent individual. People got upset when I asked Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman about the Endeavor news. And I'm like, dude,
you have to ask these questions. No one else is.
This is Babe Ruth, and they're about to sell Major League Baseball. What are we doing here? So once again, I find myself in a situation with the guy who wants to be the quarterback of the company. And look, I did pose the question, what changes do you think could be made? And Cody didn't really give a straight answer to that other than don't be a piece of shit.
I'm not sure he could have. Maybe he maybe have seen certain things, but from his perspective, I don't know if he could have.
So I just to walk everybody through what I was trying to accomplish with this Cody question. One, let's all start talking about Vince. We have spent too much of this press conference already not talking about Vince. Two, I wanted to show people how to artfully bring up the Vince topic and show the kinds of questions I think we need to be asking, which are specifics about what is going to change to prevent this from happening. And three, I guess there's multiple points here. I'm running out of fingers. Three, now that we've seen a competent, well-spoken person who has spent time at an executive level in pro wrestling give what many considered to be, at the very least, a thoughtful response.
Absolutely.
Like, took it in, said, this is bad. We know it's bad. It's been a busy week. We're all trying to take it in real time, and we're all looking out for each other. And, fine. So we got Cody's response. Then comes Hunter. Now, for those that have asked, yes, my hand was up the entire time. I did not get called on for Hunter. Would have loved to. Maybe another time. I have put in a request for a one-on-one. We'll see if that happens. So we'll see. Big what if. So the big takeaways for me were, one, obviously he hasn't read the suit. Brandon Thurston asked him about that. Have you read the lawsuit? And he said no, which I thought was, it doesn't scream to me that you're taking this seriously or want to address it. When you don't read, how can you say you listen to women when you don't listen to women, right?
Yeah, it's a really baffling response overall, just across the three questions that he gave, because just even if I don't think maybe he's like not directly read the lawsuit, but he's heard the allegations and maybe couldn't say that for obvious reasons. But like, it's just a baffling response to give in response to a lawsuit that not only alleges this stuff against the most powerful man in your company, but the company's culture as a whole.
Yes, I think I would have come prepared for this. I mean, I've had people.
I'm baffled they didn't. I don't know if it was like a PR failure or what, but like it just seemed as if he didn't have a prepared response, which is maddening.
So here's what I've gleaned, that the people in WWE are so leathered to Vince McMahon is a monster. Vince McMahon is a curmudgeony old whatever monster. That when this came out, I think a lot of people in the company were just like, oh, another Vince scandal. This one might be bad. And to them, they're just so used to having to deal with Vince stuff.
Right.
That this, I think a lot of people in the company just were like, oh, another Vince thing.
Right.
I have personally, I don't want to say forced, but made heavily, I should say shamed people within WWE to actually read this suit. Since Saturday, and those that have read it after I told them you can't I can't summarize this to you in a phone call or a couple text messages. You have to read it,
and that goes for everyone who's listened to this as well. If you've not read it, please read it, because it's not even just like a lot of the like discourse I've seen on social media about it seems to be from a lot of people who just have not read it or are not fully aware of the severity of it.
Everybody's attitude changes once you actually read it. Right. Yep. And that's why I think if you were Hunter and you had actually read it, you would have showed up prepared to push back more forcefully. I think at the very least saying you read it and are aware of the allegations and taking them seriously. That's step one. That didn't happen. Two,
of course.
Step two would be, like I set up the question, what are you doing? Thank you to Cameron Hawkins, aka Seahawk from The Ringer, for following up on my question to Cody, to Hunter, reiterating that same point. He said broadly, generally, we're doing everything possible, which I thought was the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard in this situation, just because this is a time where real leadership is needed. People are looking for people to say, I am taking this seriously. We cannot let this happen again. Even if it's to say we've opened up relations with Rain, we've brought in consultants to talk about how we can better create access for women and men. Let's not act like,
of course,
Vince
absolutely.
Let's not act like some dudes haven't spoken out about Vince in the past as well. So talent in general, right? Employs easier access to get help, speak out if necessary. The
thing is with Triple H, and even if he's like, I've seen a few people go like, well, he's not on the board, he's not really at that highest executive level that used to be. Putting all that aside, and let's even put aside like the fact that it's a wrestling company. If Triple H is now the figurehead of WWE. If a figurehead of any other sort of company addressed allegations like this against their company in this way, they would be, pitchforks and everything. It would be unreal.
Dude, but I don't know if you've noticed, CNN has written about
there's a couple of places. Yeah, there's a couple of places that have, and it's not gone well for them.
No, Deadline. And look, all things fair, I was very, very, very disappointed in Tony Khan at his last press conference. I was equally, I think, disappointed in many ways with Hunter at this press conference. And I'll say what I said after the Tony press conference. If you are a mother, if you are a sister of a woman, a father of a woman that works at WWE, and you watch this press conference, do you feel better about sending this woman that you love back to work there? I don't. I think I thought Hunter did a terrible job here, and I hope he comes out and cleans this up. I want specifics about what they're doing backstage to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I want reassurances that he knows what happened here. Like you can't address something if you don't know the problem, and you need to know the problem.
It's just baffling, because I think a couple of days before, like I think within 24 hours of the allegations coming out, a spokesperson for TKO said they were investigating it internally, and Hunter didn't even mention that. It seems as very strange that they didn't even prepare for it in any way possible.
Dude, I would imagine you were also expecting a prepared statement up top, right?
Yes, absolutely. I was expecting something off the top, and then that's it. They're covering it, and that's it. And then he just went on for 20 minutes about the Rumble success, which was confusing.
Hey, we have our first comment here, Innes. It comes from Jonas Veer. Jonas, thanks for being a ClubHaus member. Jonas says, Triple H is his son-in-law. VKM is grandfather to his 3 daughters, father to his wife. Imagine how difficult it is on him. Just another thought. Yes, no, look, I understand how difficult it is. Everyone is being put in a difficult situation here. But Jonas, my point is that you can't understand what's going on if you don't actually read it. Like,
Yeah. Do you think that he actually hasn't read it, or if he's just like trying? I assume he must be aware of the allegations. There's no way he cannot be.
So the other question that came up was from John Alba, and it was about when Hunter became aware of the allegations, because obviously him, Nick Khan, and Stephanie McMahon, they all tried to oust Vince and successfully did for a period of time until Vince came back, guns a-blazing, looking to get his company back. Now, did these people part ways and want Vince distanced from the company because they knew about this, right? And that's the other big lingering question here is, did people of power know about these allegations and not address them or bring them to light or do anything about it because they knew they had billion-dollar deals or whatever to get done, and it would be better to play some kind of use these allegations as some kind of prop to play a game of like HBO style secession,
It's a really shitty situation overall, because ultimately it's a lot of people are putting the focus on just Vince. Well, Vince has gone, so the issue's sorted. The issue is with the culture that's been created in WWE, and we need to know, even like as a fan, I need to know that my support of this company and of this industry is not supporting an environment where stuff like that and allegations like that, even if let's say it's allegedly, if they're doing anything to ensure that these allegations don't happen again, or what has been alleged doesn't happen again, it's
it is gross, and that's why more people are asking for a bigger response here. Now, in the wake of the allegations, we just before the Rumble, we found out Vince McMahon has resigned from all his positions at TKO and WWE. So for all intents and purposes, he is no longer like day-to-day of any power. There are still the moral. I mean, he's still the majority stockholder, so for every
still
dollar,
has some involvement. The upside is he can't do what he did before. He doesn't have the voting power to do what he did before. So in theory, he can't make his way back in that regard.
And I don't believe the relationship between Hunter and Vince is very good. I don't believe that Hunter is, quietly at night being like, hey, Vince, we're in a rut here. What do we do with Jinder Mahal? I don't think those calls are happening.
No, neither do I.
I don't think this. So for all intents and purposes, Vince has been separated. But again, like for every dollar you spend on a WWE t-shirt, is Vince getting 30 cents, right? Like that's kind of.
I mean, they were selling. What was it? The Vince McMahon. There was photos of that Vince McMahon shirt that they were selling in at the Rumble. The day before. So
I believe they pulled those shirts. I believe
they did pull it. I believe they pulled it on the day. Yeah, but even the day before, which I think the allegations were still out by that point. It's just strange.
Well, the other big name we talked about earlier, Brock Lesnar. He did not compete in the Royal Rumble. He was expected to compete in the Royal Rumble, but he was pulled because, and it sounds as if, according to the Observer, he was replaced by Braun Breaker, did a lot of the same spots that Brock was supposed to do, including get eliminated by Dominic Mysterio, which it was post-wrestling reporting.
Bizarre.
Post-wrestling saying that had this all not gone down, Dom was going to eliminate Lesnar and set up a match at Elimination Chamber where, hey, he might have died.
I mean, if you're going to give anyone that kind of spot, Dominic Mysterio's not a bad shout. He's been doing great stuff over the last couple of months.
I'm not saying it would have been bad, but Brock is not. The Observer saying that Brock, according to those they've spoken with, will at least be gone for a while, but may never come back. And I lean towards never comes back in this situation,
especially if what comes out is actually true, because the stuff around Hart being involved in his contract situation is just wild.
Yeah, there seems to definitely be a Brock Lesnar obsession with Vince McMahon. I'll put it that way after reading the documents. And so, right. Yeah. There's a weird, it
makes a lot of sense about the whole him walking out when Vince retired as well, I'll say, because there's now that has a whole new perspective now looking back on it.
So Brock's out. We'll see what happens with Brock. May never be back. The Bella Twins, they had to issue a statement saying that nobody should be treated like this. Of course, their father-in-law or stepfather-in-law is John Laurinaitis, who is explicitly named in this document. And I don't want to trigger anyone, but it was forceful, right, against this woman's will. John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon allegedly put her in. And it's I mean, the breakfast stuff, sex every morning, like it was.
Yeah. It's not even if it's one instant; it's multiple. There's quite a few instances in this where he's explicitly named
and look, you feel, these people are monsters, and the people that operate like this are very good at hiding their behavior and living double lives, right? And so, like, I don't want to believe that the Bellas or their mother Kathy, who I believe is still married to John Laurinaitis, as she has kept his last day on Instagram 5 weeks ago, posting photos. And you don't want to believe that Bryan Danielson knew too. I do, man. Again, Danielson was so close with Vince, right? Like, he's talked about it. He's talked about how he took notes.
Respects him, yeah.
He respects
him a lot.
He's like, I used to sit there and I have a whole journal filled with nothing but advice from Vince McMahon. And, that's, I've used the term more, or the colloquialism more times than not recently, about how if you lie with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And I think that's really what we're realizing here, is that a lot of people knew Vince was a freak and a weirdo and just didn't want to look into it. They just wanted to just deal with the side of Vince that they liked, right? Or could tolerate. And now, because of that kind of woeful ignorance, lot of questions are being asked about a lot of people. And I don't want to believe, but again, we don't know.
You have to face this reality. That's the thing is, this woman did for 3 years, so we can't turn our eyes away from it now. If you do, then you're just as bad as Vince, unfortunately.
So, we're going to move on real quick. We got a couple things. We're not going to be able to get to everything today. Some of these topics are going to get rolled over to the Friday episode. Sure. But is there any final thoughts you want to put on the Vince McMahon scandal before we move on to other things here today?
I think ultimately it's just people, again, just if you're gonna, engage in this discourse and whatnot, please read the lawsuit, or at the very least the Wall Street Journal article, just so you can get the full gist of the severity of the situation, because it's so much more than just, I've seen people say oh, he just asked her for sexual favors. It's so much more than that. And you need to get the full grasp of the situation, because if you read these allegations, then you know that questions need to be asked, not only of Vince, but of WWE and anyone close to Vince.
All right. Well, let's close out the show today looking at the WrestleMania main event picture.
Sure.
So Brock is out. We found out last night officially, or we found out Monday night on Raw. CM Punk is out, tore his tricep, out 4 to 6 months.
Such a shame.
The
timing is unreal on that.
The shot of him looking up at the WrestleMania sign, and it's this kind of for whom the bell tolls kind of situation with the Liberty Bell. It's very Dickens-esque right here with old Phil Brooks. And so Punk's out, and Rollins is injured with
debatable.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine if Rollins is gone as well? God, I mean, they Punk and Brock, I think you could deal with, but Rollins being out as well, that's 3 huge names. That,
Rollins is acting going to be in the WrestleMania main event. I think that it would take a lot for him to not compete at this point. But he comes out on Raw, and he makes this case for why he should be the one that Cody Rhodes challenges at WrestleMania. And I don't know what the WWE thought was going to happen here, but the fans hated this. I thought fans were like,
you set it up for so long for it to be Roman, and it only makes sense to be Roman at this point. If Seth at this point would be, a step down. Ultimately, it's you can't do Seth at this point. There's so many other options you could do for Seth, even with Punk out, that they'd be better than Cody.
See, but Occam's razor, right? The best explanation is usually the most obvious. Did they just say, man, we were going to hold off on Roman, but everybody's out. Cody, Seth have history.
You could, I guess.
You
It's
know,
the easiest option. It's there. You don't really have to do too much setup, but there's so many other options, and I think you have to give Cody Roman at this point, especially because at the Rumble he pointed at Roman and went, "I'm challenging you," so you can't really backstep on that.
Man, can you imagine, like, hypothetically, find out you're gonna win the Rumble, you're gonna go finish your story, then this story breaks, Brock's out, Punk's injured, and then Monday morning after winning the Rumble, they come to you and say, Cody, we gotta
you're gonna have to face Seth again for the lesser world title.
You know,
all right.
You know how you fell asleep last night thinking one thing? Yeah, we got something to tell you, buddy.
There's so many better options for Seth. I think, the two main ones that I thought of are either Drew, because Drew has been excellent the last couple of weeks, and you could go off the fact that he never really got his moment at WrestleMania because of COVID. And the other option probably Gunther, because Gunther's had this unreal Intercontinental title reign. There was already the report last week from Justin Barrasso saying that was, whether or not that was true or not, or just misinformation. But I think those are the two main options. I think you could get plenty good WrestleMania story out of either of them.
All signs seem to be Gunther versus Jey Uso, don't they?
Right. I see. It's up in the air with Gunther, yeah. Because I mean, obviously it meant to be Brock, but now that's gone. So Jay's an option. I think Sammy could maybe be an option if you wanted to, but you would need to build that up.
Why did they do Sammy so dirty in the Raw main event? It
was weird. They
like,
always seem to do this with Sammy. I don't know. It's odd. They always go very weird stuff. It feels like they don't really want to ever pull the trigger fully with Sammy, and they only had to last year because they were kind of forced into it with the reaction.
So, because I also thought maybe Sammy, but Drew beat him clean, right? Yep. And so I also think Drew Seth would have been the easiest setup, right? Yep. Punk's out, Drew gloats, basically what he did, and he's going to take Punk's spot now. I'm going to go to the main event. That's easy.
And that sets up for when Punk comes back.
Exactly.
You got the next 5 months of story. Perfect.
So I guess maybe the Seth stuff with Cody added some drama. But in some ways, I think they almost did more damage to Seth in the world title, because I thought Seth came across like he was begging.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It came across like desperate rather than my guy's gone. I don't want a lesser match. That's how it came across to me. And it's just, no. And it made Cody look weird. And it was just a really odd choice overall.
Yeah. So let's place our bets here. What do you think? Cody Roman still happens at Mania?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to keep Rock till next year, especially with the Netflix deal. I think the charm and the idea of Roman Reigns versus The Rock on Netflix in front of all those people is too appealing at this point, even with the injuries.
So you think Drew Seth then at Mania? That's for my
probably. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, Drew Seth, or either Drew Seth or Drew Gunther in a singles match. But I think Seth is the better option.
When in doubt, call Bad Bunny. Maybe we get maybe we get Bad Bunny Rollins. Maybe we get Bad Bunny Rollins. All right, lastly here, the other Rumble winner, Bayley. Foregone conclusion, I would think she's going to wind up somehow at odds with Io Sky, right?
Yeah, I think especially after the Raw tease where they did the whole thing with Rhea and Nia Jax and Nia scaring Bayley. I think it's inevitable. It's got to be Io. For months now, it's been wrapping up as the sort of like dissension with Damage Control and Bayley. So I think it has to go there. And if we get Hugger Bayley back, I'll be very happy, because as much as I've loved this heel run, I think I want to see face Bayley again.
All right. Well, that brings it. We went over time here. I try to keep them to about half an hour. I want these shows to be digestible for everybody, because as somebody who's worked in cubicles and stuff, I know how precious your lunch hour is, and I want you to spend it with us and make your day better. So we will save the rest of this news here for Friday's episode. I didn't obviously we wanted to make sure to cover the Vince thing at length. And give it the gravity.
You have to give it the due diligence that it deserves. I feel like we did that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we'll come back on Friday. We'll do this again noon Eastern. We'll talk more news. Of course, if you want to watch us live in video form, you want to see this show every Wednesday and Friday at noon Eastern, go become a ClubHaus subscriber. Go to patreon.com/Haus of Wrestling. Tiers start at just $5. This show, the post-Raw show on Monday nights, available to all members. We do also, of course, share exclusive news to all members. There's a great Trick Williams article or news item I shared yesterday with the comments from Top Star and people from backstage at WWE, talking a little bit about Trick. That went out yesterday. We also have interviews that are going out. We have the New Day interview I did. That's available for all members right now from the weekend. We have the Nia Jax interview up right now for all bronze members and above. And we have 1 gold member so far. There are spaces for 10 gold members. And gold members, they get access to everything. They get a private Zoom session with me on Fridays, and they get a personal shout out. So Matthew, at the end of every podcast, if you're a gold member, I will personally tell everyone I love you. And the person that I love is Matthew England. Matthew England is our only gold member. And Matthew, we appreciate the fuck out of you, my friend. You are absolute mensch. You are a saint of a human being. And Matthew, we're already DMing on Twitter. And if you're a gold member, my access is all yours. If anything you want me to plug at the end of these shows, Matthew, you just let me know, buddy. So that's it for me. I'm at Nick_Hausman. Anything else you want to plug, put over before we wrap up today?
Just my Twitter at Innes_McVey. You can pretty much find me everywhere if you just search Innes McVey, because shockingly, this is not a very common name, but I mean, it's good for Brandon, so it works out.
Wonderful. And of course, if you can't watch us live in video form, you are obviously listening to us in podcast form. It is free with ads on all podcast platforms every Wednesday and Friday right after we record. If you do only listen to us in podcast form, you can support us too. Go over to whatever podcast platform you want, but preferably Apple Podcasts, and leave a 5-star rating, leave a nice comment. We'll try to read comments here on the show from time to time. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the Clubhouse, and we'll talk to you on Friday.
Bye.